Alright, testing 1, 2, testing. Time to test this mic, see if it meshes well. Make sure the background music doesn't drown us out here. Testing. Okay, well, everything looks pretty good. Well, good evening, guys. Well, excuse me, still fixing a few things here. There we go, a little bit better. Good evening, guys. Welcome. Let's see, on this fine Saturday night, looks like May 17th, around 8:10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We begin another episode, well, rather a reboot episode of the Minimalist Space Program. Alright, so let me go ahead and bring up our game here. Well, hey there, Tyler. Glad to have you aboard. Okay, so for some of you guys that have been on this channel and have noticed that this specific channel focuses on the Kerbal Space Program, and not only the Kerbal Space Program theme itself, but within Kerbal Space Program, we focus specifically on the minimalist concept of the game. And what I mean by the minimalist concept is that we build things elegantly, and we build things with less parts, and build things as efficiently as possible. And for the course of this live stream, we will be creating a space program and that follows the minimalist theme. Oh, am I? Okay, so it looks like we have an audio issue here. Stereo on the left. Let me go ahead and check the settings here. Let's see if I can... I think it might be on stereo. Let's see if I can switch it over to mono here. Okay, so we should be going to mono in a little bit, hopefully. Only one way to tell. Tyler, give me a heads up once you confirm that everything is on, is switched over to the proper, once everything is on mono. Okay, let me go ahead and pull up my data here, and we are in VAB. Okay. Well, hey there, freak. Nice to see ya. Alrighty, so let's try this one again. Alright, so welcome everyone to the reboot of the Minimalist Space Program. Here in the Minimalist Space Program, our focus is on design concepts that involve creating a functioning space program complete with space stations and transplanetary spacecraft, all the wonderful stuff that the big boys do, but with less parts and with more elegant design. And that's generally the concept for the entire Kerbal Space Program playthrough on this channel specifically. However, if you recall back in the day when we started the Minimalist Space Program, we kind of stopped on episode 3. And then we jumped all the way to the Minimalist Space Shuttle program after that. And that was the result, unfortunately, of an upgrade that happened from 0.22 to 0.23 when the save file got corrupt. So what we are going to be doing... Oh, cool. All right, looks like everything is up and running much better. Thanks for checking in on that, Tyler. What we're going to be doing is that we're going to attempt a reboot of the Minimalist Space Program again. And we're going to do that on live design. So, as you can see in the rules in the upper left-hand corner, as part of the Minimalist Space Program, we are going to build a functioning space program, complete with space stations once again, settling the planets with bases and all that fun stuff. The same things that everyone else does, except we're going to do it with nothing larger than 1.25 meter parts. We're going to keep the part count as low as possible. And of course, settle the solar system in the same way that all the other people do. Now, if you've seen other people with their space program series, with their Kerbal Space Program playthroughs, you probably would have noticed that they use enormous part counts. Z-Stew, if you've ever watched Z-Stew's channel, you can definitely confirm he's a bit guilty of using ginormous spacecraft with huge part counts. Thanks, Tyler. Oh yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to play some music just to keep you guys busy while I got the mic on. So Z-Stew, with his enormous part counts and his giant spacecraft. Similarly, we have Scott Manley, who doesn't usually intentionally build huge spacecraft. He builds things a lot more functional. However, they do tend to have pretty big part counts, and he does tend to have a lot of mods. We're going to be doing here is that I am going to be playing this game on a standard office computer machine. So we're going to be doing this, we're not going to be doing this on a ginormous computer rig specifically built for gaming. So this computer rig runs roughly slightly over 2.5 gigahertz. So what this is going to do is this is intentionally going to limit me when I start building the Minimalist Space Program. We're going to make sure that we can build the space program in such a way where this office computer can handle it. And this is going to pose an interesting, fun challenge for me and hopefully for the rest of you guys as we try to figure out how we build a functioning space program without building spacecraft that exceeds the 1,000 part load. So the concept behind the Minimalist Space Program is that we try to build things with generally a part count of maybe about 30 per spacecraft, maybe 24 or less. If we build space stations, we try to keep it under 100 parts. So when I say 1 meter parts, we're going to stick to these guys here. These are the 1 meter parts, 1.25 meter parts. And it is these amazing guys here. And these are generally the original parts that came with some of the first well, I wouldn't say original parts, but these were some of the original sizes, more specifically, to the parts that came with the original design for Kerbal Space Program. You know, 1.25 meter parts came out first during the earlier designs of the game, I think back in iteration 0.13, and then the 2.5 meter parts, which were these guys, started coming in, and then afterwards you have the ginormous 3.75 meter parts, which came out recently, which are like these guys, with a 23.25, 23.75. So, let's see here. Let me put all of this away. Sorry, the chat window is all the way in the left-hand screen, so I gotta crane my head here. Alright, let me go ahead and turn the music down here. Thanks for pointing that out. it all the way down. Okay. There we go. Alright, so I got the music all the way down to 18%. About half of what it was before. Hopefully that fixes things a little bit there. Okay. So, let me go ahead and put this away here. And let's see here. So we've got a brand new save file with a chance to resurrect the Minimalist Space program. So we got to figure out what we are going to be doing first, using only 1.25 meter parts. Yes, and I'm going to try using the 0.75 meter parts whenever possible, and to keep the spacecraft as light as possible. So we're not looking only at just keeping the part counts low, but we're trying to keep the spacecraft as light as possible. So what we need to do first is we need to start establishing sorry, I'm reading this at the same time as I'm chatting here. You are absolutely right. We are on I think a 30-second time lag. So when you post your message, you're probably not going to hear a reply until about 30 seconds afterwards. Kind of funky how YouTube works that way. So you'll have to be a little bit patient with the responses. Okay? So what we're going to be doing first is we are going to do our very first steps into space, and what that involves is building a just like every other person's save file. When they start their own space program, we're going to attempt to build our own presence in space by creating a permanent settlement up there, i.e. a space station. Okay, so we're going to build our first save file, and we're going to call this the orbital fuel tank. Okay, so when you develop something with the intent of keeping part counts low, what you want to do is you want to split up your space station's duties. A space station shouldn't be an everything space station. In order to keep your part counts low, you want to build a series of smaller space stations rather than a ginormous, huge space station. And each of these smaller space stations have specific missions and objectives that they have to accomplish. So you have a habitat space. Typically, my 3 space stations that I put up there in order to keep part counts low are 1, a habitat station, 2, a transit station, and 3, an orbital fuel station. The first thing we're going to put up there is an orbital fuel station. Now, the orbital fuel station, what this one does, let me pull up our base body here. It generally doesn't carry Kerbals, just the fuel and the RCS and the monopropellant fuel. And generally, it's just up there as a fuel tank, and that's basically all it is. And it keeps things nice and simple for us. Now, it can have occupancy for, say, 1 Kerbal or 2 Kerbals for the purposes of keeping it maintained. So I guess we'll go ahead and slap on one of these lander cans. Just for the sake of having it there, in case we want to have a Kerbal up there to keep the station manned and to give it proper maintenance when needed. So let's see, we'll put the lander can up here. Let's remove that little RCS tank, and let's put on these guys here. That way we can put more monopropellant fuel up there. What we're going to do is we're going to try to build, we're going to take the next 2 hours maybe, and we're going to see how far we can get in our minimalist space program. Hopefully that within the next 2 hours we can build our space program enough that we've built something of a presence on the moon, or at least in orbit around the moon, or the mun, however you want to pronounce that. I've heard the developers call it the mun. I've called it the mun, but I've been corrected many a times and have been told it is the moon. I'll leave that up to you guys, whether or not we should call it the moon or the mun. Also, another thing I want to bring up is mods. You notice that I'm using a very minimal amount of mods. As a matter of fact, about the only true mod that I'm using in this game involved parts, as you can see here, is the Kerbal attachment system. Right? I'm going to try to steer away from using too many mods. So what we're using is just a Kerbal attachment system and the Navy Fish Dock-Align mod. And the only reason why I'm using the Kerbal attachment system is it gives our Kerbal something to do when they EVA. They can grab parts and go out there into space and just generally attach things as needed. So what we're going to do here is... so we have our fuel tank. We have our RCS fuel. Next up, we're just going to attach our... We're going to need another docking port down here at the bottom. There we go. I'm going to put that down there. You guys are free to suggest parts. This doesn't have to be specifically what I think is best. Part of the awesome idea of having a live stream is that we get input from the rest of the crowd. So you're free to provide input as to what else we should add to it. Just keep in mind, we got to follow the rules. We got to keep the part counts low, and we got to stick to 1.25 meter parts or less. So what we need also is, let's go ahead and add on a reaction wheel. So that, actually, we don't need a reaction wheel. We'll just rely on the reaction stability of the can. But what we do need is, we're going to launch this unmanned. So we need one of these guys. Going to need a probe. And we're going to need a battery. So we're going to stick that up there. Okay. What else do we need? We have 2 docking ports. We're going to need solar panels, of course. Now, there's an option that we could use the radiothermal electric generators. However, I do tend to steer away from the RTGs, mainly because I don't like the idea of sending something radioactive in orbit around Kerbin. Got to keep things a little bit green and keep things a little bit safe. So let's go ahead and put on solar panels. I like to use solar panels whenever possible. So we'll stick right here. Okay. Let's see here. Yeah, they call it the Mun. You are absolutely right, Freak. From this point until I'm corrected otherwise, we'll go ahead and call it the Mun. Okay, so this actually works. We've got our orbital fuel. Let's call it orbital fuel tank. We can attach more fuel tanks to this thing later. But as it is right now, looks pretty good. So we're going to disengage our RCS and our fuel. Make sure it doesn't get used up when we launch it. And what we're going to do next here is... now we need our lifting component. Okay. Interesting. That's an interesting idea, Freak. Pulling out, let's see, pull out all the essential parts I will use in the beginning. Let's see here. Store electricity in your fuel depot and also xenon gas. That's a good idea. So let's go ahead and put xenon gas in here. Because that is actually a great idea. We can use the xenon gas and the ion propulsion system as something of an OMS thruster. OMS meaning orbital maneuvering engine component. And since ion engines are incredibly fuel efficient, and the recent 2.23.5 upgrade increased their max thrust from 0.5 to 2 kilonewtons, means that we can actually use these engines really well. Let's go ahead and add in some xenon fuel here. This one adds 400. This one adds 700. So we'll go ahead and attach these side tanks about right here. About 2 should work. Okay, and let's see. What else do we need? We have electricity stored in here. yeah, I think we're good as it is. Let's go ahead and start adding on the lifting body here. Let me see. I don't like adding decouplers at the end of lifting bodies because the decouplers adds repulsion forces when you decouple the spacecraft, and when you add a repulsion force when it decouples, it has a tendency to screw up the apoapse and periapse of your orbit. So what we're going to do is that when we launch our vehicle and we get it into the proper orbit, we are just going to undock it. So it's going to attach kind of like that. Okay? And then we're going to tell that docking port to undock. So what we're going to do is I'm going to attach another probe down here at the bottom. I'm going to attach this guy. So what's going to happen is this lifter, what it's going to do is afterwards, after it undocks from this fuel station, we're going to have the lifter deorbit itself. So we're going to need the probe to do that. Let me see here, and we're going to add in this guy here, and we probably need battery power for him too, so he has just enough battery power to deorbit himself. Okay, there we go, perfecto. Now what we need to do is that is our final stage. We need to attach our next stage here. This is somewhat untread realm for me. Normally in the Minimalist, when I build Minimalist space program type designs, I use the 2.5 meter parts quite liberally. And I don't use the 3.75 meter parts a whole lot, but I use the 2.5 quite a bit. So this is going to be untread realm for me as I try to use only 1.25 or less. And we're going to use an engine down here. Okay. What we need also is we're going to have to attach some... We need to attach some struts, because the only thing attaching this space station is the docking port, and it's gonna wibble wobble a little bit. So we need to keep this thing stable. So we'll attach some struts there. Let's see. Next up, we need the rest of our lifting body. So let's go and attach our radial decouplers. Alright, and we are going to go with the old-fashioned asparagus design. So, we drop this buddy down and... And we'll attach our fuel tank there. And another set of fuel tanks up here. And we're going to attach the LVT-30 engine at the bottom here. And let's bring this a little bit further down here. There we go. Perfecto. Okay. And then, of course, we're going to need our fuel duct, proper fuel piping, and attach it to the bottom there. Actually, we need to lift this engine up a little bit. There we go. Okay. So that we can attach our fuel pipes right there. Give it a little bit more so it doesn't get in the way when we attach the other parts of the asparagus staging. And we're going to stage our main engine accordingly. Give this a quick save. I don't think we need struts. We're good on struts here. We're going to rely on the new Unity Unity 5 engine upgrade that Kerbal Space Program 23.5 is taking advantage of, which allows for stronger connections between parts and the need for less struts. So cross your fingers, guys. We're gonna hope for the best and hope that we don't need struts. Okay. Let's go ahead and attach the second part of asparagus staging. Okay, Okay, perfect. And then we're going to stage this accordingly and then move our fuel line. Come on, fuel line. There we go. And move this here. Perfect. Yeah, that should be good enough, right? We can get into space with this. All right. Next up, we probably don't need launch clamps, so we're going to attach them anyways, just in case. So we probably only need just 2 of them because this is a fairly light vehicle as it is. So let's go ahead and lower this guy all the way down here. This one is going to be a nice, hopefully simple, easy launch. So we have our xenon fuel, we have our RCS monopropellant, we have our liquid fuel. Let me go ahead and I need to, there we go, cut the xenon gas supply. I don't see any reason why xenon gas would be used up in the middle of the launch, but you never know. So we'll lock that down, and I know Kerbal Jeb, you're not going to come with us on this one. All right, let's launch. Okay, here we go, and fuel throttle is up, SAS is up, resources up. Let's go ahead and get all of our information up and running, and let's go ahead and rename this accordingly. So we're going to rename the vessel orbital fuel tank, and we're going to classify this as a probe, not so much a space station, really. Here we go, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! Oh crap, I forgot. Oh, my bad. I forgot to stage the launch clamps. Okay, so here we go. Moving off at a brisk 50 meters per second. And going straight off into the cosmos. Okay, and we're ready at an altitude of 1 kilometer. This should be pretty easy. We should be able to get this guy up into orbit. Pretty simple, guys. Okay. Here we go, and we are at half fuel on our first asparagus stage, and it looks like everything's holding together pretty well. So I guess we didn't need those struts after all on the outside asparagus booster, so that's good. I prefer not to use too many struts. Struts add to part count. As a matter of fact, let's take a look at our part count now. We are at 46 parts, which is not too shabby. Okay, and moving up to 140 meters per second, 150 meters per second. Oh boy, okay, so we've reached almost terminal velocity before we've reached our 5 kilometer altitude. And first stage separate. All right. And we have some speed loss, but nothing to be worried about. Okay, and 7 kilometers. Let's switch over to orbital speed here. Okay, orbital speed is pretty respectable. Coming up to 8 kilometers. And approaching 9 kilometers. Perfecto. This is just beautiful. Okay, and let's go ahead and begin our gravity turn just a shade early. So we're going to turn ourselves over into our gravity turn. There we go. Now what's neat about going into our gravity turn is it almost exponentially increases our orbital speed, our surface speed actually, because surface speed also takes into account lateral speed movement as well as vertical speed movement. Okay, so orbital speed is good. We are approaching 500 meters per second. Remember, our magic speed is about 1,300 meters per second in order to reach suborbital altitude. Once we reach about 1,300 meters per second, we can go into MECO, main engine cutoff, and then we can coast all the way to apoapse and then circularize our orbit from there. Okay, and approaching 650 meters per second. 750 meters per second. I'm starting to have a little bit of a bad feeling about this. For some reason, I'm not sure if we're going to make it. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay, dropping off our next stage. Stage is away. Okay, we are on our second to last engine here. Come on, buddy. No, you can do it. Reaching 900 meters per second. If we can make at least 1 kilometer per second before we're at 3/4 fuel, we should be okay. Okay, and we are approaching 950 meters per second. Come on. Give me to 1 kilometer. 1 kilometer. We are 970, 975, 980. All right. Well, bam. We are at 1 kilometer per second, and we are at good fuel. Okay. So we may make it after all. Okay. Let's see here. We are at 21 seconds to apoapse. Usually when you're going off into orbit, healthy time to apoapse is about 30 seconds or more. This is an indicator that we're not doing so hot because we're 21 seconds to apoapse. But that should change as long as our thrust remains consistent and our fuel holds. Okay, approaching 1200 meters per second. Okay, our acceleration early on was a little bit too slow. And as a result, we have to go faster than 1300 meters per second in order to reach suborbital. So, here we go. Let's hope our fuel holds here. Okay, altitude approaching 36 kilometers. Okay, tell me we are... Yes! Okay, we are past T-minus 30 seconds to apoapse. So that's a good sign. That's a really good sign. Now we just need to push ourselves here, see if we can reach at least to our 70-kilometer altitude. Yeah, we need to push our orbital speed well beyond 1300 meters per second. Come on, buddy. You can do it. Okay, 1500 meters per second, and mark. We are at 50 kilometers at apoapse now. I don't think our fuel is gonna hold though on this second to last stage. So we might have a little bit of a problem here. Okay, and looking good. Okay, so we are almost at 70 kilometers. On the apoapse, and oh boy, we may well reach orbital circularization speed in long... Oh, wait, never mind. Looks like we made it. Okay, so we are at MECO, main engine cutoff. Our apoapse is at 90 kilometers. We are at 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes to apoapse. Okay, cool deal. So let's go ahead and turn us. And this stage is almost done anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to expend this, whatever last vestige of fuel here, a whole 9 units of fuel, to help us circularize just a little bit here. What we're going to do, too, is we're going to circularize this orbit without using any maneuver nodes. Let's see here. There we go. And engine up. And perfect. So disengage. Now here we are. Now I don't use maneuver nodes a whole lot. I'm from the old school crowd of people who played this game long before maneuver nodes were developed for this game. And that's the time when we had to guesstimate. Traversal to the moon. Figure out how we're going to get there without using maneuver nodes at all. So we're going to do this semi-hardcore mode. Oh man, that battery is not symmetrical. Oh well. Okay. And what we're going to do too is we're going to extend the solar panels too. So let's go ahead, spread those babies out. We're Wabam and wabam. Okay, and we are going to coast till we are pretty close to the apoaps. So let's go ahead and speed us up here. Perfect. And now we throttle up. Okay, and then we circularize this orbit. Now, in order to circularize this orbit, we need to reach an approximate speed of about 2,300 meters per second. So, it should be reachable with the amount of fuel that we have. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna tilt us toward the horizon, and we're gonna scoot ahead. I may have burned a little bit too late. Oh boy, so what I'm gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to lift our nose a little bit, and we're gonna tilt ourselves to 30 degrees. Okay, fingers crossed. There we go. Alright, our T-minus to apoaps is now starting to increase. Woo! I was worried about that for a second. Now we can dip our nose again. So let's go ahead and dip our nose, and we're gonna dip to about 10 degrees here. And keep us going nice and steady. Okay, and our ascending node is 0.5 degrees. We're using the moon we're going to use the MUN in order to properly set our orbit in such a way where it's a nice, even equatorial orbit. I love the fact that the developers set up the MUN in such a way where it helps us build our inclinations when we set our orbits around Kerbal. Same thing too, when you're orbiting around Duna, you can use Ike as a really good indicator to make sure that your orbital planes are good too. Now you notice me lifting my nose and dipping my nose again. I'm trying to make sure that our T-minus apoaps doesn't get away too far from us. To make sure that we get this orbit as circularized as possible. What we're going to aim for is we're going to try to go for your standard 100-kilometer orbit. So we're going to see if we can make this as circularized as possible, again, without using any maneuver nodes. We're going to dip our nose here just a little bit so we can bring our apoaps closer to us. Okay, and then we're going to... Oh, looks like we're looking good. We are circularizing well. We're going to drop our nose just a little bit there. And Miko, and then engine turn on just a little bit here. Perfect. And we are at apoaps 100 kilometers. Oh, perfect. Okay, so next up, what we are going to do, let's go and check our fuel first real quick. And fuel is looking good. We are perfect, guys. Look at this. This is a textbook launch right here. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to zero out the planes. So we're going to bring this ascending node down to 0. So we're going to speed up time, and we're going to head on over toward our ascending node. Okay, and approaching our ascending node. Yeah, you're right. I love using maneuver nodes too, especially when I traverse when I traverse planets. However, I try not to use them whenever possible. But I will say that I do use maneuver nodes quite liberally. But when it comes to orbiting around Kerbal or going to the MUN, I normally don't use maneuver nodes a whole lot. Also, yes, the nose canting thing. If the apoaps is ahead of you, you can dip your nose and you can draw the apoaps toward you. If you lift your nose above the horizon, you can push the apoaps away from you. So a little bit on orbital mechanics there. So we're approaching the ascending node. I'm getting a little bit sidetracked, so I need to dip my nose to 180 degrees, and we're gonna turn our orbital plane and bring it to as close to 0 as possible. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, so when you approach the ascending node, switch to 180 degrees, which is pointing your nose south. If you're approaching your descending node, turn your nose north to 0 degrees. In order to zero it out. So there we go. So we are almost done. All we got to do now is turn our periaps and bring it as close to 100 kilometers as possible. So Let me go ahead and turn our nose to our prograde marker at 90 degrees. And then we're going to zip along straight toward our apoaps. And coming on to our apoaps, we're going to wait until we're at about maybe 10 seconds to apoaps. So let's bring our nose here, and there we go. Equal to the horizon, tilted at 90 degrees. And let's scoot ourselves a little bit forward here. There we go. Okay, so let's do a very small burn and see if we can get ourselves as close as possible. Now you see how the apoaps is getting away from us as I burn? That's because my nose is above the horizon. Watch when I dip my nose below the horizon and I burn. Notice how the apoaps is coming toward me really fast? So it's a bit of a juggle when I lift my nose up and I burn to push the apoaps away from me. So a little bit of magic there in orbital mechanics. So let's point it straight toward the horizon and see if we can get it close to 100 kilometers as possible. Okay, we're almost there. I want to try to bring both ends to roughly about 100.5 kilometers. We'll be OCD like that and see if we can get it close. There we go. 100.4 kilometers on either side. That's about as close as we're going to get, guys. Woo! Okay, so let's head on back to our screen here. And we are going to start disengaging our lifter. The lifter has plenty of fuel, so we're going to turn our vehicle north. Now, you notice how I got the periaps and the apoaps really close to each other, and we have a nice, neat circular orbit. If I had attached a decoupler, rather than just use this docking port to detach us, and I decoupled us now, it would have jumped our apoaps to an extra kilometer. So we would have like 101 kilometers on the apoaps and 100 kilometers on the periaps, and we'd have a slightly less circular orbit as a result of that, because that decoupler would have pushed us that extra distance as a result. But because we're using just a docking port here, we don't have to worry about that. Same thing too, if we were to turn our spacecraft north or south and use the decoupler, chances are that would have destabilized our ascending and descending node. So I'm going to stabilize this fuel depot, this orbital fuel tank, and have it face north, and then we are going to detach. Yeah, I have no doubt that you guys have been playing this game for a while. And Freak, no doubt you know all these tips already. And that's really cool that you know this stuff too. Let's see here. Let me bring this up. Okay. Yeah, and it's really cool meeting other people in the community that know a lot about orbital mechanics just from playing this game. And so it's a real treat to not only help you guys, but to help learn some tips from you guys out there too as I play this game. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to decouple and decouple. And our lifting craft down below here, we're going to shimmy ourselves out. There we go. I'm sure NASA would have loved this. Okay. We don't have any RCS thrusters or anything, so we're going to shimmy ourselves out. And then we're going to turn our vehicle retrograde. And we're just going to give this slight, just a little bit of a burst of speed. We don't want to outright throttle out of here because you could stand the possibility of your engine, of the reactionary effect from your engine accidentally destabilizing the space station behind you. So just wait until you have enough clearance. So we're going to speed up a little bit. And now we destabilize our spacecraft. Or destabilize the orbit of our spacecraft. So wha-bam! Thrusting away. Oh, and there we go. No Kessler syndrome, guys. Well, we're going to have debris in space, but we're going to try to minimize our Kessler syndrome as much as possible. Yeah, the chat screen is I'm using several computer screens actually as I play this game, and so the chat screen is actually a full 90 degrees away from the computer screen that's in front of me that I'm playing. So in order to answer your questions, in order to review what you're saying, I have to pause myself for a little bit, mute the microphone for just a few seconds while I read your statements, and then reface the condenser mic and talk to you guys. I know it's a little bit counterproductive, but you know, it's my setup. It's the only way I could do it with this current setup that I have here with me. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch on over to our orbital fuel tank here. Okay, and let's see here. Everything looks good. Let's double check our orbit. Our orbit is 104, 104. Perfecto. Our fuel resources are there. Okay, we've got an orbital fuel tank, guys. Woo! Okay, so the first part of our space station. Let's go and head back over to our VAB, or back to the Space Center. Alright, so we're still following the rules. We are at 1.25 meter parts or less. Part count is low. I didn't check to see what the part count was on our space station. Let's check to see what the part count is. So what we're going to do is we're going to head on over to the VAB and check the design itself. Actually, no, because our design itself also includes the lifting body. Let's head back over toward our tracking station just real quick here and check to see what our part count is on the actual fuel space station. Okay. Let's see, fuel tank probe, orbital fuel tank, and what do we got here? Okay, so part count on this guy is 12 parts. Ooh, pretty respectable, guys. We are looking good. Okay, so let's head back to the Space Center again. What we're going to do is we're going to need something of a tug also. So let's go ahead and skip the habitation station. We'll build a habitation station later. First off, let's see if we can start setting another orbital fuel tank around the orbit of the Mun. So, let's see, how are we going to do this? We have an orbital fuel tank here. When I used to do it with a 2.5 meter parts, and what I used to do is I used to build a space station in orbit around Kerbal, and then I would dock a tug to that station and then use that tug to ferry vehicles and parts over to the Mun. I'm thinking we could probably do something similar to that here, maybe? I wonder. Let me see here. I'd hate to use the nuclear engines, though. I wonder. Let me see here. I guess what we could do is we can take this orbital fuel station here. We can dock it to the current orbital fuel station, and then we can launch a tug, is what I'm thinking. And send a tug up there to grab this station and bring it to the Mun. I think that might work. Let me see here. Let me think about this for just a second. Yeah, I think we could do that. What we're going to need to do, though, is we need to put RCS on this vehicle then, so that we can make it dock. You know, I probably could have pressed I. I guess I kind of squelched them. I'm a little too addicted with the whole point and click method there. I don't use a whole lot of hotkeys, unfortunately. I use action groups, but not hotkeys. And strangely enough, I'm not too aware of all the hotkeys in this game. So thanks for the heads up, by the way. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some RCS fuel that we're going to use specifically for this vehicle. So let me see here. Nope. This RCS tank. And then we're going to attach some RCS thrusters to the side, like so. There we go. Now we can dock this fuel tank to the other fuel tank in space. We could do it the more we could do it the more Z-Stew way. and if you guys have been watching Z-Stew's videos, he likes to use a ton of part counts. We could use the Z-Stew way and just add a ton of boosters all around this thing and use all of those boosters just to have this fuel tank make the trip all the way to the Mun without worrying about using a fuel tug and all that fun stuff. However, that would really balloon our part count, and that's something we're trying to steer away from. So we're trying to do this as elegantly as we can. So next up, we're going to launch this fuel tank and we're going to dock it. So let me head on over to our crew capacity and get rid of Jebediah. Sorry, Jeb, it's not your time yet. And let's go ahead and launch this puppy. Okay, there we go. Sorry guys, bit of a mic issue there. Looks like we got it nice and fixed. Yeah, Z-Stew, oh. Potato, tomato, tomato. Mun, moon. I guess everyone has their own pronunciation, eh? Okay, so let's go ahead and prepare for our interception of our orbital space station here. So let's go ahead and target him. And we're gonna rename this. We'll probably need to rename it again once we get it over to the Mun, after we undock it from our first orbital fuel tank, but we're gonna name it anyway. So we're gonna call this the Mun orbital fuel tank. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're gonna speed us along here until the station is almost on top of us. There we go. And launch! Oh crap! Oh crap! Oh crap! Oh crap! Oh, I forgot to stage the I forgot to stage the clamps again. Okay. Note to self. Once we get back into the Space Center, we gotta fix that. Okay, here we go. We are at 75 meters per second, approaching 100 meters per second, and let me see here. I wonder what our tonnage is, too. It looks like we're at 56 tons. It's pretty respectable. Okay, and we're at 100 meters per second on the mark. Again, making good speed, even with the extra added weight here. Funny thing about 1.25 meter parts is that when you use those really small parts, anything below 2.5 meter parts, you start to count tonnage by tenth of a ton rather than full tons. Very slight changes in weights can make all the difference on 1.25 meter parts. Okay, and getting ready to drop our first asparagus stage mark, and away you go. Also, the reason why I don't like using struts on these 1.25 meter parts with these radial decouplers is these radial decouplers, they have a repulsor force on them, and that they can push stages away without the use of separatrons. However, when you add the struts to the into the equation, it has a tendency to negate that repulsing force that those radial decouplers provide. So it's one of those things that you got to be mindful of when you design your spacecraft. So if you really absolutely positively don't need struts, I would recommend not using it. Okay, so we're going into our gravity turn here, and let's go and switch over to orbital speed. Okay, and we're going to... Ooh, okay, so the station just passed us, but that's okay. We can catch up with it just fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to do another interception without the use of maneuver nodes. And basically an interception without maneuver nodes just is pretty easy to do too. It just uses a lot of time warping and a certain amount of patience in order to make it pull off. But I usually prefer it over using maneuver nodes because maneuver nodes can be a little bit finicky sometimes. Okay. Now approaching 700 meters per second. We are at a pretty healthy speed, so we're doing real good here. Okay, altitude looks good. If it's anything like before, it looks like we gotta reach in order to reach suborbital speed, we gotta push ourselves to roughly 14 to 1500 meters per second to make it work. Okay, and apoapse is at 30 kilometers. Time to apoapse is... Ooh. So we're dropping time to apoapse, but that's okay. Let's go and drop that our other stage here. I missed that. Totally forgot that those engines were out of fuel. Okay, we are approaching 1 kilometer. 950 meters per second. Almost there. Okay, speed is pretty healthy, and wha-bam, we are at 1 kilometer per second. Woo! Okay. And time to apoapse is at 29 seconds. Come on, buddy. Come on, push it to 30 seconds. There we go. Woo! Okay, so we are at 30 seconds to apoapse. We are at a healthy burn here. Okay, so we got roughly about 200 to 300 meters per second delta V left to go in order to get ourselves into suborbital. Okay. Approaching altitude of 40 kilometers. Good. Alright, so we are past 1200 meters per second. Let's see here. Normally, if we had a really healthy burn, it's usually about this time that we would reach an apoapse of about 70 kilometers. But because we don't exactly have the healthiest burn on our lifter here, it's going to take us a little bit longer. However, the good news to this is that, as you can see here, as you can see here, the arc, our suborbital arc, is lengthened a little bit more across the face of Kerbal, which will make it easier for us to circularize our orbit. Okay, so we're definitely going to have to go well past 1,500 meters per second in order to get us to reach suborbital flight here. Okay, and 62 kilometers on the apoaps. 65. We need to get us above 100 kilometers in order to... Oh, wait, no. The opposite of that. We need to be below 100 kilometers in order to catch up with the orbital fuel tank. So what we're going to do is we are going to stop us at about 85 kilometers. For 85, and we have MECO, main engine cutoff. Fuel is looking good. Okay, so we're going to turn ourselves about. Going to turn ourselves toward the horizon. You know, I probably should have put in some lights on this vehicle too to help us with docking. But since we have the Navy Fish docking mod, we don't have to worry too much about that. However, I am not a big fan of docking without lights. And I am an even worse fan of docking on the night side of Kerbal too. Okay, and let's go ahead and open up our solar panels. Because we are just about in space, so we should be just fine. There we go, and solar panels are open. Perfect. Okay. And now, since we are now in space, we can go ahead and speed us along here. So let's go ahead and speed up until we are about, let's say 20 seconds to apoaps. There we go. Okay. And let's turn us straight toward the horizon. And we boost up. Full throttle. Let's turn our nose above the horizon too. We want to push our apoaps away from us. There we go. Nice, healthy apoaps lift. Perfecto. Okay, and we're just about out of fuel on our stage. Good. And disengage our stage. And engines again. We'll have to lift our nose a little bit higher this time because we're using a smaller engine with less thrust. So we need to compensate for that by lifting probably closer to 45 degrees actually. There we go. So we're at a 45-degree tilt, and we are now successfully pushing the apoaps away from us again. Okay, and we're going to dip our nose slightly. Let's see if we can keep our T-minus to apoaps roughly within the 10-second range. Okay, we are approaching 2 kilometers per second. As you can see down here, we are almost at 2 kilometers per second. Now remember, we want to try to hit 2,300 kilometers, 2,300 meters per second. Excuse me, 2,300 meters per second in order to circularize our orbit. Okay, there we are. And drop our nose toward the horizon here. We are almost circularized. 4 seconds to apoaps. Let's lift our nose a little bit more and push our apoaps away from us. And there we go. And, ooh, we are well... we pushed that apoaps a little too far ahead of us there. If you push the apoaps too far, what's going to happen is that apoaps is going to start increasing. The altitude on the apoaps is going to increase exponentially. And that's something you want to avoid, especially if you're shooting for a specific number. In our case, we're shooting for about 90, an altitude of about 90 kilometers. So we're going to drop our nose, drop our nose, drop our nose, drop our nose. Whoop. Okay. And then lift our nose again. And thrust forward. Okay, perfect. That's close enough. Whew. Okay. We're going to keep this 87 kilometer orbit. And we're going to use that to play catch up with our orbital fuel tank there. In the meantime, what we're going to do is we are going to zero out our ascending node. So we're going to speed up time and head on over toward our ascending node, and we're going to zero that puppy out. And we are at the ascending node, so let's go ahead and turn us over. And we're going to turn ourselves south to 180 degrees and zero out the node. Perfect. We're at NAN. Woo! Not a number. Doesn't get much closer to zeroing out the planes than that. NAN. Perfecto. Okay. So now all we got to do is just coast until we get close enough. And as we get closer to our orbital fuel tank, we're going to increase our altitude little by little. So let's go ahead and speed up time here. Remember, we're going to intercept the orbital fuel tank without using maneuver nodes. So what this involves is playing catch-up. And basically eyeballing the distance that we have towards our orbital fuel tank. As a matter of fact, what we're going to do is we're going to increase our altitude early. And after we increase our altitude, we're going to head on over to the Space Center, and then we're going to speed up time from there. So let's go ahead and increase our apoaps. We're going to circularize our orbit to, say, let's shoot for 98 kilometers. And so 90. Let's increase throttle just a little bit more. 92, 94, 95, 6, 97, 98. Perfect. Okay, and then we're going to zip around to the other side and increase our periaps. Alrighty, freak. Good to hear. Alright, so let's head on over to our Apple apps here. So we're going to speed on over and bring our periaps as close to 98.5 kilometers as close to 98.5 kilometers as possible from there too. Okay, so we'll wait until we are about there. Oh, let's get a little closer. Perfect. Okay, and then turn ourselves prograde. Oh. Perfect. And then thrust. All right. Let's bring it at about a quarter thrust here. Perfect. Look at that. All right. So now what we got to do is head on over to the Space Center. Well, we're going to save this real quick. What we're going to do is head on over to the Space Center. And from the Space Center, what we're going to do is we're going to speed up time. Okay, so we'll head on over toward our tracking station. Okay, and from our tracking station, we are going to watch this guy catch up to that guy. So time, speed up. Here we go. We should be playing yakety sax in the background right now. All right, we're coming in. So it's going to be a little bit here. Coming in ever so slowly. And there we go. Okay, close enough. So let's go ahead and head on out. Wait. Why did I step out of the tracking station? Let's go back to the tracking station. And let's go ahead and select our vehicle again here. Why in the world did I do that? Okay. There we go. Perfect. Alright, so we are 8.7 kilometers from our target. 8.6. So we're coming in pretty fast there. Let's see, on our next turnaround, we're going to somewhere around 10 kilometers. Okay. Let's open up all of our data again. Let's see how close we're getting. We're going in pretty fast. So, let's once again start tightening our orbit as we get closer and closer to our target. So we're going to go prograde again. And let's see if we can get this as close to 99 kilometers as possible. Because I'm a stickler about details like that. Okay, maybe a little bit closer. Let's shoot for 99.1. And we scoot around to the other side. Okay, I bet you anything we're going to be docking on the night side of Kerbal. Always happens. Always. If Murphy has anything to say about it, docking never happens on the light side of Kerbal. Ever. Okay, here we go. Actually, we're coming in real close now, so I guess I don't need to work on the periaps. I can go ahead and start working from this side here. And ladies and gentlemen, we are approaching the dark side of Kerbal as we are approaching docking range. What do you know? Okay. So, let's go ahead and turn ourselves over. And let's go to our prograde pink indicator. And let's begin thrusting. And let's push our let's pull our prograde marker towards the pink indicator. There we go. All right. Let's go ahead and actually let's go ahead and push ourselves to roughly 10 meters per second. That should be a nice healthy interception speed towards our target. Perfect. Okay. And speed up time. Do. Half a kilometer. 400. Yeah, let's see. 300, 200. Okay, now we need to start slowing down. So let's go and turn ourselves over. Who knows? We may be able to make it to the light side of Kerbal when we start physically docking. Okay, let's slow ourselves down to about 1 meter per second. We don't need to be speeding into this guy here. Now, what's great about using 1.25 meter parts for docking is that you can turn on a dime and you can stop on a dime. Unlike using the 2.5 meter parts or the 3.75 meter parts, where you got to have a lot of clearance ahead of you in order to properly slow yourselves down. Okay, we're going to use our RCS thrusters too to make ourselves nice and square to our target. Okay, moving on. Oh yeah, you're talking about the Freak. You're talking about the advanced nav ball type mod thing. Yeah, I haven't used that mod yet. I've heard wonders about it, and Scott Manley has used it limited wise. However, I do enjoy docking without mods, but in order to save time and get more stuff done with this live cast, we're going to use Scott Manley's mod, which is the Navy Fish docking mod. I know, complete sacrilege, but really it does make docking a lot quicker, especially if we plan to use these live stream recording videos. Let's see here. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go above. Let's head on. Let's switch over to chase cam, and we're going to dock from above. Yes, the Navy Fish docking mod also provides that too, which is super cool. Providing the ability for your ship to be perfectly parallel with the other ship. The docking mod, the Navy Fish docking mod, however, provides a little bit too much information sometimes, and it takes the fun out of docking. However, we're still going to use that here. Okay, so we're going to slow ourselves down to 0.1 meters per second, and we're going to attach ourselves from above. So we're going to drift up, and I'm going to speed up time here so we can drift up. And then we're going to RCS left. And actually, we're going to switch to fine-tune RCS mode too. This spacecraft is really light, and just the slightest jets of RCS make a whole lot of difference to this vehicle. Okay. Here we go. As a matter of fact, we are just 10 tons. Wow. Okay, we are at 24 meters to target 23. Speeding us along again. Whoa-bam. Okay, so now we are above, and look at that. We are approaching the day side. Woo! Okay, which is a little bit too late because we are halfway done with the docking already here. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn ourselves down. And we're going to turn ourselves south. The great thing about having the station pointing north is that or pointing south, is that you always know that the direction that the docking ports are going to generally stay consistent when you approach the station. And the station will always be pointing in the in a constant direction. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out of chase cam mode, and we're going to switch over to the Navy Fish one. So here we go, and set target, and we're going to put this alignment thing here off to the side. And turn ourselves about. We're going to do our, there we go. So we're going to roll us 180 degrees. RCS accordingly. Ooh. There we go. Perfect. Yeah, generally me too. I don't like using a ton of mods. However, when I play games and I experiment with mods, I have a tendency to play with save files that are specific to just 1, 2, or 3 mods at a time. I don't like playing with games that have a ton of mods attached to them. Now, for example, this one just has the Kerbal attachment system. I've played games where I have just the Cathane mod attached to it, or mods with just B9 mod attached to it, but never any mods that have like the B9, Cathane, and the Kerbal attachment system all at the same time. It seems a little bit, as you say, a little bit too obtrusive sometimes too. So, plus, it can wreak havoc on the performance of the game sometimes too, especially since I'm playing this game on a not so awesome computer. I have to be careful not to overload the mods there. Okay, here we are. So we are looking good. So all we got to do now is pretty much just speed up time. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and as you can see on a DST indicator here, DST, we are at 4.4 meters to target. And the CVEL means that we are approaching the target at 0.02 meters per second. So we are going towards it. If it was a positive number, that means we are going away from it. Some neat stuff there. I love this. I kind of enjoy this extra information, although sometimes it can be a little bit too much because you can abuse it. However, since this target indicator only shows you 1/10 of a meter per second, it can be helpful sometimes to know, using the Navy Fish docking mod, exactly down to the 100th meter per second you are approaching or moving away from a target. Okay, and looks like we're looking good. And normally when I dock, I like to take my time. And I don't normally speed up time a whole lot. It's almost relaxing when it comes to docking. And I like to savor the moment. But considering this is a live cast, in the interest of time, I'm going to have to speed this guy up. So let's make sure that we are properly aligned first and speed up. Okay. I lied about the CVEL thing. Actually, when it's negative, it means that we are going away from the target. And when it's positive, we are going toward the target. So as you can see here with the CVEL indicator on the on the bottom right-hand side, we are moving away from the target actually at 0.02 meters per second. So let's go ahead and RCS forward, so that we are going towards the target. There we go. Now we are going towards the target at 0.05 meters per second. Whew, sorry about that. Yeah, you might want to give it a try. Freak, and try building space stations to a point to see what the limitations your computer can do. It's always a good idea, just so that you know what the limits of your game is based on your computer's performance, so that you can plan your stations accordingly. I know for a fact that on this computer, when I build space stations on this computer, things start to drop in frame rates a whole lot at about 200 parts. So I know that if I'm going to build a space station, I got to keep it roughly at around 150 parts or below 100 parts. Okay, so RCS. We're drifting a little bit off the target, so let's RCS back on to target here. Here we are. And approaching at 0.06 meters per second. Okay. And we're zeroed out again. Perfect. Now, when I speed up time, I want to make sure that I stop the time speed up just before the docking ports latch. Because what happens is, as all of you have probably realized, when you fiddle around with the time speed up, is that the physics models on these vehicles turn off when you speed up time. So if you wait too long, especially when you're docking, you stand the risk of your spacecraft phasing into the other spacecraft like a ghost or something. So when you start time again, the two spacecraft will explode. As a result of both of them phasing into each other like some sort of twisted Manhattan Project deal. So you have to be real careful to not speed up time to an extent where your spacecraft collide into each other. Okay, and perfect. We are docked. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to save, and we're going to double check our periapsis and apoapsis, which is still looking good. Looks like the docking accidentally shifted our periaps and apoaps by about 100 meters, which is still usable. It's fine. Okay, what we're going to do next is that we're going to detach our little vehicle here. Actually, yeah, let's go ahead and detach it. What I was thinking about doing was using this little vehicle here as our as an orbital assembly tug. However, I just realized that this thing doesn't have any docking ports attached to it, so it can't exactly grapple anything. So if it had a docking port to grapple parts in space, I would have kept it up here and used it as an assembler module to pick stuff up and attach it to various parts of the station. But with no docking port, unfortunately, that's not an option. So we're just going to detach. Okay, and now time to deorbit this guy. So RCS up, and we RCS backwards, and we RCS laterally, so we can get some clearance away from the vehicle. Woo! Okay. There we go. And RCS backwards again. And we have good clearance, so... Oh boy, we're still in chase cam mode, so let's go ahead and switch to auto. And we're going to turn to retrograde. And thrusters on. And let's deorbit this sucker. There we go. And perfecto! We are deorbited. Switch on over toward our station here. Make sure everything looks good. Okay. Perfect. 100, 100. Perfecto! Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, so next up, let's head on over towards our space center. Okay, so we are back in our space center. What we're going to be designing next is our space tug. What we need is a vehicle that will attach itself to modules in space and will either push or pull those modules towards whatever destination that it needs to go, i.e., in this case, the Mun. Okay, so let's head on. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Now, what we're going to do different this time is that this tug is going to be manned. Oh, we're going to send our first manned guy into space. So we're going to grab Jeb for this mission here. Unfortunately, and because of the way I forgot to adjust the screen size of this game, and as a result, the recruit astronaut tab isn't clickable. So I have to head on over to the astronaut facility itself to grab the Kerbals that I need for my mission. So I'm just going to go ahead and recruit these guys early and head on back into the VAB again. Okay, here we go. So, I'm thinking we can use either our Mark 1 cockpit, our Mark 2 cockpit, or our command pod Mark 1. I really want to use the Mark 1 cockpit because it has amazing views. However, the docking port, you can't put a docking port on the nose. So by default, I could use the Mark 2 cockpit. Or I can use the Mark 1 landing can. Let's go ahead and use the Mark II cockpit. The downside to using the Mark II cockpit is it's heavier. It is 1 ton versus the 0.66 tons and the 0.84 tons. But we'll go ahead and hack it. We'll use it as is. Although I should probably download the mod that reconfigures the cockpit of this thing that allows for proper views of the outside environment. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to attach the advanced grabbing unit at the end of this. Like so. Let me check to see what the torque is on this guy. Torque of 10. Perfect. So we don't need to, well, actually we do, because this is a tug. If this spacecraft was by itself, we really don't need another inline reaction wheel. But because this vehicle is going to be pushing and pulling stuff around, we're going to need a reaction wheel in order to compensate for the increased mass of whatever it attaches itself to. Okay, so we're going to have our grabbing unit here. Let's go and get rid of the logo on that. And we're going to set an action group to this one too. So action group 9 is going to be toggle arming. I ever tell you how much I love this coupler? This grabbing unit by far is one of the most amazing stock parts I've ever had to work with. And it's great too, because what it allows us to do is not only being able to tug things in space without the need for docking ports, it also allows us the ability to build bases on other planets in such a way where we can refuel vehicles and such with rovers with fuel tanks attached to them. All it takes is to take this grapple unit and attach it to a rover, and have that rover with a fuel tank attach itself to whatever lander comes down onto the planet, and just fuel it up and off you go. Okay, so we're going to call this the Space Tug. Okay, and let's see here. How are we going to do this? We could, no, I thought about having this Space Tug pull a vehicle around, but if we have this Space Tug pull things around, and maybe something like this, the idea is that we would have outboard thrusters, outboard boosters. So that means we would have to attach like segments off to the side here if we were to attach like a fuel tank. And then we would have had to have attached, let's see here, these guys. Ooh, there we go. We would have had to attach these guys off to the side here, and probably with the nuclear engines. I really don't like using these nuclear engines too. I almost consider them a cheat. Because, so back to the original topic, if we were going to design, say, a tug that looked kind of like this, like a Y-wing off of Star Wars, and use this to pull the vehicle around, this would limit the stuff that this tug could pull, because it would have to fit within the clearance of these engines here. However, if we design a tug that was actually a pusher, and have the claw on the front, we don't have that limitation anymore. We can have this vehicle push any size vehicle that we want, i.e. asteroids, right? And it doesn't have to fit the clearance of whatever. The downside, however, is that you're pushing the module or the vehicle or the asteroid, which could lead to the possibility of instability when you're pushing a vehicle around versus pulling. But that's a chance I'm willing to take here. Oh, sorry, reading your post there, Freak. And yeah, it's a really great idea. Beforehand, I've always had to attach docking ports to rovers and attach them to bases on planets and whatnot, and it was always a real fight to try to match the docking ports on the surface of planets. But with these claws, you really don't have that issue anymore. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to have just this claw up here. Let me see here. Let's simplify the design by having just this fuel tank down here at the bottom. And I guess we'll have to use the nuclear engine. Let's go ahead and use the nuclear engine and attach it to the bottom there. The Y-wing design is a great idea, however, it adds part count. So in the interest of keeping part counts to a minimum, we're going to move away from the Y-wing design here. Okay, and we're going to attach a battery to the top. There we go. And then we're going to use the 2x3 solar panels for this one. We don't want to have ginormous gull wings sticking out of our tug here that could accidentally brush up against something when we're docking and whatnot. Okay, and then what we're going to do here is actually we're going to attach a regular RCS tank here. And what else? We're going to need our RCS thrusters. So let's go and check our center of mass. Our center of mass is about right there. So let's add our RCS. But if we remove the fuel, it's going to drop just a tad bit. So we're going to drop our RCS thrusters just slightly below center of mass to compensate for the movement of center of mass as the fuel decreases. Okay, now I'm trying to think, is this going to be enough fuel? By itself, this is definitely more than enough fuel to push, to have the tug go to the moon and back. Yeah. Docking struts are definitely important because of the crazy instability, especially if you're pushing the vehicle around. As a matter of fact, we're going to add an extra part. What we're going to do is we are going to, because there's probably going to be a lot of instability, we're going to use our Kerbal attachment mod. And we're going to add a toolbox here. And in that toolbox, we're going to add some struts. So, let's see here. We're going to add some pipe endpoints. Let's add 4 pipe endpoints, and we're going to add 8 struts. And we're going to add some illuminator lights here too, just in case. There we go. That should fill things out nicely. Perfect. That way, when this vehicle docks with whatever it is, it's going to tug or move around. We can have our Kerbal step out of the craft and attach struts to the vehicle to help it be a little bit more stable when we start pushing it towards the mud. Yeah. I saw that mod, the mod that helps with RCS placement. It's a really cool mod too. However, I don't use that mod a whole lot for some reason. You know, because I've never really had too much of a problem with RCS placement. Okay, there we go. I imagine it's important if you're a real big stickler for making sure that a vehicle remains stable when you're RCSing. But you know, I've never had too much of an issue with that. Okay. What else do we need? We'll probably need some supplementary fuel just in case. Because when it ultimately attaches to the module, we're probably going to need more than 360 units of fuel to push a module into Mun orbit. So okay. I cave. We're probably going to have to use the we're probably going to have to use the Y-wing design. So let's go ahead and remove this engine. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach these fuel tanks to the side here. So let's go ahead and remove these RCS thrusters. Yeah, actually, you don't necessarily need to, Oh, you're talking about the Kerbal attachment system. I thought you meant the mod that adds a toolbox window up to the top left-hand side. Yeah, the Kerbal attachment system is amazing, and the toolboxes that it comes with provides a lot of streamlining so that you're not carrying a ton of Kerbal attachment items with you. So it keeps the part count small, and allows you to take out only the parts that you need when you need it out of that toolbox. Okay, let me see here. I really don't want to use those atomic motors, but let me see. Okay, so we're going to have to do the Y-wing design here. Let's see, what else do we need? Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in another engine in the back here, another fuel tank in the back here. What this does is it provides... I really don't want to do that. Actually, no. Let's not do that. Let's squish this all the way up here. What I want to do is I want to be able to add just a good old-fashioned docking port to the back. That way I can have this thing stick to space stations when I need it. I don't want to use the clamp to attach to space stations when not in use, because the clamp should only need to be used if it needs to grab something and bring it somewhere. It shouldn't be used for docking to something, you know. So the docking port should be the one, because believe it or not, this is as amazing as this clamp is. It's actually pretty buggy. The 23.5 update to this thing, when you attach this clamp to something in space initially, it's pretty stable, and everything works out well. But when you speed up time with this clamp attached to something, there's a weird glitch that causes this clamp to phase into whatever object you had the clamp attached to. It doesn't happen a whole lot, but every now and then it does. And so when you ultimately declamp from the object, what'll happen is the game will register that this clamp is inside of whatever it's attached to, and it'll explode spontaneously. It's funny at first, but then it gets a little bit annoying after a while. So ultimately, I want to use these docking ports to attach to a space station when this tug is not in use. It's the most stable way to do it. So, but as it is right now, it's not going to be able to attach because these engines are in the way, and I really, in order to efficiently use this as a tug, I suppose I have to use those nuclear engines. So I'm going to have to add to the part count just slightly, and we're going to add another fuel tank. Right about there. There we go. Perfect. Okay, now we can reattach our RCS thrusters. So we're gonna have to attach this by 2s instead of by 4s this time, because those nuclear engines are in the way. So we're gonna do it like this. Okay, and then let's go back to our action groups here, and we're gonna reset our solar panels so that both come out. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got our tug. A little bit of an interesting guy here. Oh yeah, we need lights. I almost forgot about the lights. Actually, we could just use the lights off of our toolbox here, so we're good as is. We don't necessarily need the lights. Okay, let's see here. Now we need to figure out how we're going to get this thing into space, and this thing has to be manned. There are no probes attached to this vehicle, so we're going to have Jebediah be our first man into space. But first, we need to start building our lifter here let's, again, use the biggest fuel tank that we can use. Okay, so this lifter is going to have to be pretty, pretty involved, pretty hefty to make this work. So we're going to have to use a lot more engines than usual. Oh my goodness. Okay. There we go. Oh, I almost forgot one little detail. We need our fuel ducts. There we go. As a matter of fact, we have to extend our fuel ducts from the bottom on up here. There we go. That way the fuel drains from the main tank, comes down here to the secondary tank, and then goes up to these tanks up here. There we go. Okay. So this is going to be ugly. Really ugly. And we're going to leave stuff hanging around in space too. But that's okay. Let's attach this. We're going to do asparagus staging again, but we're going to do this probably by 8 in order to make this work. So there's going to be 8 radial engines on this thing. Okay, and let's see here. We're going to attach this engine here. And let's go and stage this properly. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and add a fuel line about here. We may have to use struts. I don't think we need to though, but we'll see as we build this thing. Okay, so let me see here. Let's go ahead and add another set here. Oh boy, this is going to be awfully close. Good thing about 1.25 meter parts is that when you attach them radially, you can attach 8 radial tanks to the thing, versus 2.5 meter parts where you can only attach a maximum of 6 tanks on the radial part. Okay, there it is. And then what we're going to do is drop this so it's properly staged. And then we're going to attach the fuel lines to the side here. Huh. Okay. Well, that's actually that's a pretty decent idea there. Okay, Freak, we're gonna call this a manned space tug then. There we go. That way we know that it needs to have a Kerbal in the vehicle. Okay, so we're almost done here. Let's attach some more boosters here to the side. Now, if we were using 2.5 meter parts to build our lifter, this would be a piece of cake. We really wouldn't need all this stuff here. But this is part of the fun, guys. Using only using really small parts to try to accomplish a mission here. That would normally be really easy if we were to use larger parts. Okay. And almost done. Here we go. And fit. And then stage. Okay. And looks good. Now this still might not be enough because these nuclear engines are pretty heavy. So we're probably going to have to we're going to have to need more boosters. But we are not going into the Z-Stu realm. Absolutely not. So, we are going to probably use some SRBs on the side too. Now the trick is, an asparagus, if we're using an 8-part asparagus, if we're using asparagus staging that's this involved, there's a pretty good chance that these outside engines, the first set of outside engines, are going to run out of fuel long before the SRBs do. So, let's attach the SRBs, say, right here. Yeah, okay. And then we'll attach our SRBs off to the side, right there. Perfecto. This is gonna look a little bit awkward, but it'll work! I swear it'll work. I hope. I swear I hope. Okay. Here we go. I guess, oh, and we're going to need some struts to make sure that this thing stays stable during flight. We're definitely going to need some struts because you got this whole tug here, plus these nuclear engines keeping things straight, which is attached only by this single, solitary, fragile docking port. So we're going to have to attach these things here. Oh, not like that. Like, let's attach it, say, like that. There we go. Okay. That should provide some decent stability, hopefully. Okay. Total, this brings our part count to our man, Space Tug. 74 parts. Woo! It's quite a number. But we'll deal with it as is. Also, we need struts. So, for our SRBs. So we'll attach those off to the side here. Okay. We can hack it with just 4 struts. It should be fine. And then we're going to have our clamps, launch clamps. Now we need to have our launch clamps properly staged this time. There we go. Okay, I think 2 launch clamps should do it. We should be okay with just 2 launch clamps. Cross your fingers, guys. I'm going to save this, and then we're going to drop this puppy down. Perfect. Okay. Here we go. We should be ready to go, and let's launch. Okay, I totally forgot we're doing a night launch. Let's speed up time a little bit till it's daylight. And speeding us forward. Okay, here we go. So throttling up. Oh boy, we're not gonna wait until. We're just gonna go ahead and launch as is. Here we go, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! Moving majestically into the sky. We're doing some relatively good acceleration, so we should be doing pretty good. Okay, and if I'm right, our first set of asparagus stage engines should run out of fuel long before the SRBs do. Cross your fingers, guys. Hopefully the SRBs will run out of fuel before we have to drop our second set of asparagus engines. Okay, and we're down to 1/3, 1/4 fuel on our first set of asparagus engines. SRBs are looking okay. Already, okay, so we're almost to 150 meters per second. That's cool. Before we even reach 3 kilometers, And dropping this pair. Oh my gosh. Woo! Let's try that again. Okay. That staging wasn't exactly perfect. Let's head on over and move our staging for our SRBs up. Okay, let's try that again. Speed up time towards daylight. There we go. SAS on. We're up to full throttle. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! Okay, let's hope we get things right this time. And Space Tug is in the air. Okay, and first asparagus stage is at half capacity already. Okay, and we've broken the 100 meter per second mark before we even reach our first kilometer. So we're reaching, so we have some really good acceleration going on here. Things are nice and steady. We're now at 1/4 fuel on the first set of asparagus stage engines. Getting ready to drop our first asparagus stage engines in 3, 2, 1, and mark. Well, that didn't turn out so hot, did it? Oh boy. Let me see how we're looking. Okay, so technically we're still kind of okay. Let's see how far we can get on just this. Come on, guy, you can do it. I believe in you. Okay, this is going to kind of hurt us because we don't have our SRBs anymore. And hopefully we can do this. We should have reached 150 meters per second by now. But we are not there. Okay. Cross your fingers, guys. We are now coming at 150 meters per second and altitude at 6 kilometers. Let's see if we could push at least 9 kilometers before we have to get rid of our next asparagus staging. Perfect. And dropping next set. Okay, we're at 8 kilometers. We're keeping steady at just slightly above 150 meters per second. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to start our gravity turn just a little bit early. So we're going to turn us over. Here we go. Oh, we're fighting real hard here too. So this one's going to be a little bit of a slow turn. Okay, and tilting to 45 degrees. And perfect. We're going to switch over to orbital speed. Perfect. Okay. So orbital speed is starting to pick up now. Let's see if we can break 600 meters per second before we have to get rid of our next asparagus stage. Hopefully we can do that, because when we drop all of our asparagus staging and we're down to our last engine, which is this guy at the bottom, there's no way that single engine can support us if we don't have proper speed. We may have to resort to turning on our nuclear engines a little early to compensate them, but we'll see. Okay, here we go, approaching 500 meters per second. Looks like we're not going to be able to reach 600 meters per second before getting rid of our next asparagus staging. So, oh well, we'll see what we could do. Dropping next set. And there's our staging moving majestically away. Okay, We got to make at least 1 kilometer per second. We got to do this before we drop our last asparagus stage. So this one's going to be awfully tight. Here we go, 600 meters per second. We just might be able to pull this off. You know, this might actually work. Okay, there we are, approaching 700 meters per second. Everything is looking beautiful. Let's go and take a look, and let's see what our Apple Apps is currently. Apple Apps is... okay, so Apple Apps is not too healthy right now. We are well below the 13-second mark to Apple Apps, but that's okay. We'll give this a little bit more time and see how this works out. Okay, 800 meters per second. We're definitely going to reach at least 1 kilometer per second before we get rid of our last asparagus stage. Almost at 900 meters per second. Come on, buddy. You can do this. There we go. And 900, almost at 950 meters per second. Perfect. We are at 950 and approaching 1 kilometer. Come on, buddy. You can do this. 980, 990. Woo! We are at a kilometer per second. Okay. If we can make at least 1,200 meters per second before we get rid of this asparagus stage, we should be cool. What we're going to do is we're going to change the staging on the fly. I'm going to drop my nuclear engines down 1 step. So we activate those nuclear engines when we drop our last asparagus staging. See if we can give ourselves that extra boost. And asparagus staging away. There we go. Okay, cross your fingers, guys. We're still increasing speed. We just have significantly less thrust, unfortunately. I think we should be okay, though. Yep. Our T-minus to Apple Apps is well above 30 seconds and increasing, so we're still looking good. As a matter of fact, we can afford to tilt ourselves past the 45-degree mark. So we're going to drop ourselves to about 30 degrees, maybe 25 degrees. There we go. Yeah, we'll drop ourselves down to 20 degrees here. Perfect. Beautiful. And we have a little bit of overheating from the nuclear engines, but definitely nothing to worry about. RSS, I imagine you're talking about the real solar system mod. Because if you're talking about the real solar system mod, yeah, that's some real hardcore stuff. I forget which KSP player is playing his entire series off of the real solar system mod, but wow, that is some incredible stuff that he's doing there. Okay, and 1,500 meters per second. Let's see if we can safely hit at least 2 kilometers per second here before I start pushing us straight towards the horizon. And let's take a look here. Okay, we're still looking really healthy. I just really hate using these nuclear engines in atmosphere. Not a good idea to irradiate the atmosphere. Oh well, though. We're doing this in the name of science. 1,800 meters per second. We're well on our way to 2 kilometers. Yeah, that real solar system mod, that's some real hardcore stuff. I saw it, and I've seen people play it, and then I thought to myself, you know what? That's a no. The parts in this game are designed around the size, are designed around the certain scale. If the real solar system mod came with parts that matched the scale, to which I imagine there's some mods out there that allow the use of parts that are proper 1-to-1 size of, say, real life NASA vehicles. I imagine that it would be easier to work with the real life solar system mod. However, since everything is on a smaller scale in terms of vehicle size and parts, there's just no way I would play the real solar system mod. It's just way too hard. Don Lorenzo, I think he was the guy that played his career, that played the career mode. Oops, we're going way, oh my gosh, our app-lapse is way too far out there. Don Lorenzo, I think that's the guy who played his Kerbal Space Program game based off of the number of views he got. And the more views he got, he multiplied it with he used some sort of math equation to confirm the amount of money that he collects based off the number of views that he gets and thumbs up and subscriptions that he gets that would fund his next mission, if I remember correctly. Yeah, minimalism wouldn't work too well with the RSS mod. Not so much. Okay, I really got to drop this Apple apps here. It is crazy. I wasn't paying attention there. Let's see if we're gonna have to dip our vehicle below the horizon here in order to make this work. Okay, and we're at Miko, main engine cut off. Let's go ahead and reactivate our engines again. Oh boy. Okay, let's turn off our engines again, and let's drop our nose all the way down here. Okay, so we're down to 30 parts. That's pretty respectable. And but we're at 24 tons, which is actually, it's really light by 2.5 meter part standards, but by 1.25 meter part standards, 24 tons is pretty hefty. Okay, and thrusters again. Okay, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to wait this one out, and we're going to have to just coast until we reach our Apple apps. We're way too high up on the Apple apps, but that's okay. But since we're up here, let's go and open up our solar panels. Now, if you notice, there's a little bit of flickering going on with the lights and shadows. Like if I put the angle right here, I lowered the shadow and light count in order to compensate for the fact that I'm using a less powerful computer to play this game. So you're going to see a little bit of flickering now and then as a result. Okay, perfect. And now what we're going to do is we're going to coast all the way to the Apple apps. Okay, and we'll probably start thrusting about a minute before hitting the Apple apps, right about there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to dip. We're going to dip our nose well below the horizon so that we can drop our Apple apps a little bit. There we go. So we're going to have to turn ourselves hard here. That 24 tons is really resistant to the inline reaction wheels. Here we go. We're going to tilt ourselves to negative 45 degrees. And then we're going to thrust. There we go. You see how the apoapse is starting to decrease now? Since our nose is dipped down. That should bring our apoapse behind us. There we go. Okay, and we're going to increase thrust some more to 75%. Now, ultimately, our aim is to drop our orbit well below 100 kilometers so we can play catch-up with the space station ahead of us. Okay, and we'll drop ourselves to 90 kilometers on the periapse. 91 is still fine. And then we're going to scoot on forward. We need to zero out our plane too. So we're approaching the descending node, which means we need to turn our spacecraft to 0 degrees, which is north. Yeah, if you're not paying attention, that apoapse can get away from you. And if you're speeding up really fast, that apoapse has a tendency to exponentially increase if you're not too careful about pitch angles. Okay, and speaking of pitch angles, I am going to pass our declination before I get a chance to switch our vehicle north. Oh boy. Let me see. There we go. And let me throttle. Let's see if we can get as close to 0 degrees as possible. There we go. 0 degrees. Okay. Let's go and approach our periapse here. Okay, and we're going to start thrusting when we are roughly about maybe 15 seconds towards our periapse. Now, what we need to do is we need to turn our vehicle retrograde. And this thing turns like a hog. That 24 tons is no joke. Okay. There we go, and oops, we are passing our retrograde marker. Let's go ahead and scooch ourselves properly. Yeah, there we are. Okay, let's go ahead and thrust ourselves backwards here and decrease our apoapse. Let's see if we can get our apoapse down to about 98 kilometers, maybe 95. Okay, we are approaching 110 kilometers. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, we are good. And our declination nodes are good, so our planes are matched up. Next up, let's go ahead and head on over to the other side, and we're going to lift our periapse up to 98 kilometers also. We're going to catch up to this station yet. Okay, and then after we manage to circularize our orbit at 98 kilometers, we're going to head on over to our tracking station and speed up time. Okay. Let's head on over to our prograde marker and throttle forward. 98. Perfect. Woo! All right, let's head on over toward our tracking station and let's speed things up. Okay, and to the tracking station. Okay, here we go. Okay, and we're going to speed this a little bit faster here. Faster still. Okay, we're going to have to do this really fast. Oh boy, are we even approaching him? Let's... Faster, faster. Okay, yeah, we're approaching him. Just pretty slowly. Oh, I hope Jebediah brought some extra snacks with him. Because this is going to be a while. He's going to be in space a long while. There we go. Okay, and we're almost there. Perfect. All right, let's head on over to our manned space tug. Okay. Let's go ahead and turn ourselves accordingly. Actually, we really don't need this lifter anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to transfer our fuel. Let's go ahead and transfer all the fuel that we have in this stage, and this should make us a little bit more maneuverable too. Semi-slow process here. Actually, it looks like what happened during this launch is that this rear engine in the back was primarily draining fuel from the tug and not necessarily from the tanks here. So that's why this main tank and the bottom tank here is empty. Kind of funky there when you use docking ports instead of decouplers. Sometimes we tend to forget that docking ports have cross feeds enabled, which means that fuel can transfer between the two separate craft, especially while the engines are on, versus decouplers that don't have cross feeds, so that they don't drain fuel between stages. Okay, we are almost done with the fuel transfer. Also, what we need to do is we need to start attaching the lights to this vehicle too. We're definitely going to need lights to help us dock. Well, not need, but want. Technically, we can dock without lights, but it's always good to have lights with us anyways. Okay, so now that we have transferred all of the fuel that we need, we are going to get rid of this guy. So, time to decouple. And thrusters on. Perfecto. Okay, let's head on over to the day side before we, to help us so that we can attach lights in daylight. Okay, and we are approaching them pretty steadily. We're approaching the station pretty steadily here. Perfect. Okay, now that we are in daylight, let's go ahead and save. And now, Jeb, it is time for you to do your standard EVA activities. Before we do that, we're going to turn our vehicle north. Oh, this thing is so much more maneuverable, too. And what you're going to do, Jeb, is you're going to start attaching our lights on the outside of the craft for docking purposes. So, time to head on out. Okay, and let's head on over to our Kerbal attachment box. Open container, and we need an Illuminator Mark 1. Perfect. And what we're going to do is we're going to attach it to the top of the vehicle. So let's head on over. And we're going to attach it just behind the cockpit. That way we have excellent illumination ahead of us. Oh, very careful now. Attach. And turn the light around. Like so. We're going to need to dip it too just a little bit. So, let's go ahead and re-grab it again. Let's see if I remember the keys correctly. So up, and I forget which key it was. It was shift, I think? Nope, nope, definitely not shift. Nope. Okay, I think it was alt. So alt. We'll leave this one be. It's good enough as it is. Okay. Perfect. Actually, that's still a little lopsided. Let's take the OCD route and let's reattach it again. And let's see if we can center this as much as possible. There we go. Okay. Next up, we're going to have rearward facing lights. And we're going to attach it to the back. That way, when we dock it to the station, we can see where we're docking. So we're back here again. Open container. And we're going to grab the Mark 1 light. This time we're going to attach it to the underside. Okay. And attach. Perfect. Okay. Let's head on back into the cockpit there, Jeb. Forward and grab. And in we go. Okay. Turn our lights on. Perfect. Woo! Alright, we are ready for docking. Let's go ahead and scoot on forward here. And time to speed up time. Okay, we are 7 kilometers away and approaching. Alright, so chances are, if Murphy has anything to say about it, we again will be docking our vehicle on the night side of Kerbal. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully we'll do this on the day side. Okay, and the station is rendered. Perfect. And guess what? We're on the night side again. But this time we've come prepared. We have lights. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin thrusting. So let's face in the proper direction. And nuclear engines on. We'll give it about quarter thrust. And we're going to pull our prograde marker over the pink indicator marker. There we go. And approaching at a steady 12 kilometers per second. Ooh, okay, so we're speeding along really fast here. Okay. And we're going to have to slow ourselves down a little bit here now that we're approaching at about half a kilometer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push our retrograde marker back over the pink marker. So throttle just a little bit here. There we go. Okay, and we're going to slow ourselves down actually to about maybe, we're going to bring ourselves to a crawl, roughly about 2 meters per second. So we'll thrust ourselves again, and then recenter, and then thrust again. There we go. Perfect. All right, let's go and speed ourselves along here. Okay, and now we're at 300 meters from target, so we're going to push the retrograde marker again. And as it stands, we're going really slow now, so let's go ahead and face the target. And let's pull our prograde marker over the pink target marker. Okay, and thrusting. Perfecto. Okay, quick save, and forward we go. Okay, RCS on, and let's reorient ourselves. So we're going to RCS our prograde marker over the pink prograde. Thrusters forward. Thrust again. Let's bring it up to 1.5 meters per second to target. And now, speed up time. Okay, perfect. Let me test our claw here. Make sure that it works. Make sure the action group works properly. Perfect. Okay, claw looks good. What we're going to do is we're not going to attach our claw to the station. Like I said, this docking port is going to be used for permanent docking to the station. So what we're going to do actually is we're not going to tug during this episode. We're going to specifically just dock, because I just noticed we're going well past the 2-hour mark here. So let's see if we can dock this bad boy to the station. Okay, and oh boy, we're going entirely too fast. We need to drop ourselves at least half a meter per second. So we're going to RCS. RCS forward. Perfect. And then we're going to move our prograde marker. Whew. Okay, so this prograde marker is a little bit stubborn. There we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to try docking from above. So RCS up and forward. Perfect. Okay, and off we go. And let's go and reorient ourselves again. Yeah, we're starting to drift a little bit to the right. There we go. Just small jets of RCS, warping forward, and then small jets of RCS again. And what we're going to do is we're going to drop our RCS marker towards our nose, our prograde marker towards our nose, because we don't need to lift our altitude anymore. There we go. Perfecto. Now let's go and slow ourselves down. Perfect. Let's go and turn our vehicle northward. So we'll turn our nose to 0 degrees. Perfect. Now we just need to align ourselves. So we're going to switch targets here, control from here to that docking port, and we're going to activate our Navy Fish docking mod. There we go. Okay, so turn ourselves here along our axis. I'm going to switch this to 0 degrees. And as mentioned earlier, our CDEL is 0.03, which means we're approaching the target at 0.03 meters per second. Let's go ahead and use our RCS. And we're going to start maneuvering ourselves accordingly. Distance is 17.5 meters to target according to the DST. So we should be doing okay. Let's go ahead and speed ourselves up. Whoops. I sped up a little bit too much there. Let's re-RCS. There we go. Okay, and Perfect. And we're coming down nice and steady at 0.05 meters per second. Okay, and our lateral green alignment marker is almost up. Let me go ahead and zero out our lateral movement. There we go. Just need to do our lateral movement just slightly now. Now we're doing little tiny jets of thrust. As a matter of fact, I need to switch over to fine-tune mode here. So a quick hit of the caps lock's key. Perfect. RCS back up. Zero ourselves back out again. Alright, so now it's time to play the space ballet. And just do little tiny fine-tuned thrusts. Okay, and we're coming in nice and easy. Good, 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 good. Okay. And I'm going just a little bit too fast there. Let's go ahead and slow ourselves down. We'll drop ourselves to 0.03 meters per second. Should be perfectly fine. What we're going to do is we're going to actually have Jeb come out, because I have faith that we are properly lined up, and we're going to have Jeb inspect this docking. Come on, buddy. Let's go and take a look. Look at that. It's slightly off, but I'm going to bet that we're still okay. Ooh, oh, it's pretty close too. Look at Jeb, he's completely captivated by this moment. Because right now, the spacecraft is completely unguided, and it is off-center too. I should probably get back into craft again and recenter this bad boy. Yeah, okay, I was hoping I could have Jeb just hang around and watch it dock, but I guess that's not the case. So let's head back in again. Grab back into the cockpit. Oh boy, we are way off. Okay. RCS back on, and we need to do a really fast maneuver here. Come on, come on, come on, come on. There we go. Okay, SAS off, RCS off, and we're gonna let them slide and shimmy and move about. Yeah, I shouldn't have taken the Jeb out of the vehicle. And there we are. SAS off. No, SAS back on again. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have Jeb step out, and he is going to secure everything via struts. So let's go and have him outside. And we're going to attach some struts to these vehicles here. Lights on. Go and open up our toolbox here. Open container. Strut endpoint. Close. Okay, and let's see here. Make sure that we keep the wobbling down to a minimum, which really there shouldn't be too much of a problem because all of these are 1.25 meter parts, and inherently there is a little bit of wobbling, but definitely not as much wobbling if you're going to use 2.5 meter parts with all that hefty weight. But still, it's always good to take that extra precaution to make sure things remain as stable as possible when you're attaching things in space. Okay, let's go and grab the other strut here. Open containers, strut endpoint, close. And down we go. Okay, perfect. And let's go and attach the other strut endpoint about there. And let's link it. Link. Perfect. Look at that. Beautiful. Okay, and struts are attached. So that should keep things semi-rigid. And actually, technically, we can... No, actually, we would not be able to. I was about to say we could probably tug this vehicle as is. We might. We'll have to take... we'll definitely have to bring in those solar panels before we start tugging. Otherwise, chances are those nuclear engines are going to shear off those solar panels as a result. But that is an experiment for next time. We are approaching almost the 3-hour mark. So we're going to call this one a day, and we will continue this next week. I'd like to thank you guys for watching and hanging out with me today as we rejuvenate the Kerbal Space Program Minimalist Space Program. We consider this mission partially accomplished, and thanks again, guys. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye, have a great weekend, and good night.